Okay, I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're handed an absolutely impossible logistical puzzle. You have over 1 million fast, slippery, completely identical animals living entirely underwater. And your job? Your job is to ensure that every single one of them gets a highly precise, life-saving medical procedure. How do you even begin to vaccinate 1 million swimming fish without missing a single one? Or, accidentally jabbing one twice? It sounds like straight-up science fiction, but this is a daily reality in the incredibly high-stakes world of industrial aquaculture. Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped to guide you through this today, because we are looking at this wild intersection of microscopic biology and massive, heavy-duty industrial engineering. We are going to explore the hidden biological defenses of farmed fish and uncover exactly how we manage to protect millions of them from invisible underwater threats. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by checking out the unique threats of the fish farming environment. Then we'll meet 4 microscopic enemies lurking in the water, explore the fish's own 2-tiered defense system, see how we actually train that immune factory, and finally, wrap up with the jaw-dropping logistics of vaccinating millions of fish at an industrial scale. All right, part 1, the fish farming threat, high density, high risk. Let's dive right into why these farms are such a unique battlefield when it comes to health. You see, intensive farming packs fish together at densities way, way higher than you'd ever find in the wild. And, well, disease is a totally natural part of life, right? It's nature's built-in population control. But in a farm, the physical distance between these animals is practically zero. So if a nasty bug gets into the water, it doesn't just spread, it rips through the population like wildfire, reaching catastrophic levels super fast. Plus, stress plays a huge role here. Just like us, when fish get stressed out, maybe from weird water temps or just being handled too much, their natural ability to fight off sickness really takes a hit.
So what exactly are we fighting here? Well, in aquaculture, a disease is basically any condition that messes with the natural state of the fish. It's an unwanted disruption. It stunts their growth, messes up their bodily functions, and, worst-case scenario, leads to massive die-offs. And for the fish farming industry, disease is literally the biggest hurdle to profitability. I mean, if you can't control disease, you simply do not have a farm. It's that simple.
Which brings us to part 2, 4 microscopic enemies: parasites, bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Because to protect the fish, we gotta know exactly who we're up against. Out there in the water, there are 4 main types of contagious villains. First up, parasites. Think of the notorious sea lice or microscopic costia. These guys live entirely off the host, just feeding on mucus and blood. Yuck. Second, we've got bacteria, those rapid-multiplying, single-celled troublemakers. Third is fungi. These usually look like a creepy grayish-white cotton coating, stuff like saprolegnia, which is absolutely devastating to eggs and young fry. And finally, we have the viruses, the tiny, tiny genetic hijackers. Now, the biological contrast between a bacterium and a virus is actually super fascinating. Look at bacteria. They're pretty self-sufficient, right? They've got a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and they reproduce just by splitting in 2. They handle their own business. But a virus, it is so much smaller and incredibly simple. It's basically just a protein coat wrapped around some genetic code. No metabolism of its own at all. It's this weird bridge between living and non-living stuff. To reproduce, a virus has to physically attach to a host cell, inject its DNA or RNA, and completely hijack the host's machinery to pump out more virus clones. It's literally a hostile takeover. And that biological difference, it completely dictates our battle strategy. With bacteria, we can use antibiotics. They target the bacteria without hurting the fish. But, and it's a huge but, if we rely on them too much or mess up the dosage, those bacteria mutate into dangerous resistant superbugs. Viruses, on the other hand, are a total nightmare. Right now, there is absolutely zero effective way to treat a viral outbreak once it happens. No cure. None. Which means our only hope, our literal only line of defense against viruses, is pure prevention and an incredibly well-prepared immune system. And that takes us to part 3, the fish defense system and its 2 tiers of immunity. Let's look at the biological hardware the fish brings to the fight. So how does a fish naturally defend itself? It uses this brilliantly designed 2-tier system. Tier 1 is the non-specific immune system. Think of this as the castle walls. It's the scales, the skin, and most importantly, this slimy outer layer of mucus. If that mucus gets scraped off by a parasite or from rough handling, boom, the wall is breached. Now, if an invader actually makes it past the wall, it runs straight into Tier 2, the specific immune system. This is an internal network of blood plasma and organs, like the spleen, that deploys these highly targeted cellular assassins, lymphocytes and antibodies, to hunt down that exact invader.
Moving straight into part 4, training the immune factory, creating antibodies. Because that specific internal system needs to know exactly who it's hunting. The source material we're looking at has this brilliant analogy. We can actually think of the specific immune system as a literal factory, complete with its own laboratory, a massive production hall, and huge warehouses for storing models and finished products. These organs aren't just reacting blindly, they are actively researching, designing, and manufacturing bespoke biological weapons. Let's take a quick walk across the factory floor. Step 1. A foreign invader, let's call it antigen C, from a virus, sneaks into the fish. Step 2. The immune factory's lab captures it, studies it, and builds a custom model for an antibody, antibody C, that perfectly locks onto and neutralizes that exact antigen. Step 3. Once the blueprint is nailed down, the factory shifts into mass production, churning out antibody C to obliterate the virus. And step 4, which is the really cool part. Once the infection is beaten, the blueprint for antibody C gets filed away in the factory's archives. If that exact same virus ever shows up again, the factory skips the research phase entirely and instantly goes into mass production mode.
But here is the fatal flaw in nature's design. Analyzing a live aggressive virus takes a lot of time. And unfortunately, that's often more time than the fish actually has before it, well, dies. This is where vaccines come in. They're the ultimate biological cheat code. We take dead or inactivated microbes and slip them into the fish. The immune factory? It has no idea it's looking at a dummy. It analyzes it, builds the model, and files that blueprint in the archive entirely risk-free. Oh, and nowadays, we even mix the vaccines with oil-based adjuvants. These slowly release the antigen over a long period of time, which essentially keeps that specific archive active for the entire lifespan of the farmed fish.
All right, part 5. Vaccinating the millions, industrial-scale precision, because taking this cellular science and applying it to millions of living, swimming fish is a whole different ballgame. Now you might be thinking, hey, why not just mix the vaccine into their food or water? And yeah, oral and immersion vaccines totally exist. They're incredibly easy to administer, but they offer pretty poor protection. Think about it. A weak or sick fish isn't going to eat enough of the medicated feed, which leaves the most vulnerable guys completely unprotected. So to get the rock-solid protection required for a massive industrial farm, you got to use physical injections. It is highly labor-intensive, technically demanding, and every single fish has to be big enough, usually around 35 grams, just to survive the procedure.
And the prep work before a single needle even touches a fish? It's rigorous. First, the fish actually have to be starved for 2 to 3 days. Why? Because injecting a fish that has a full stomach drastically increases the odds of accidentally puncturing an internal organ. Nobody wants that. Next, water temps are strictly monitored. For salmon, it's got to be kept under 10 degrees Celsius to keep their stress levels way down. And finally, the whole population has to be carefully anesthetized so they can be handled safely.
Just wrap your head around the sheer scale of this for a second. We're talking about massive, massive volumes of completely anesthetized fish, all resting in a bath, just waiting to be processed. Moving this many animals takes a literal assembly line of highly calibrated machinery and absolute pinpoint precision, because, frankly, the margin for error here is almost microscopic.
The crucial point here is that even the tiniest mistake can be catastrophic. The needle has to go exactly along the midline of the belly, perfectly spaced 1 to 1.2 pelvic fin lengths in front of the pelvic fin, and it has to penetrate the abdominal cavity by just 1 or 2 millimeters. That's it. If the needle is a tiny bit too short, the vaccine ends up in the muscle, causing severe inflammation and ruining the meat. If the angle is off, or if a poorly anesthetized fish wakes up a bit and flails around, the needle could pierce an internal organ, causing mass die-offs. Heck, even a needle that gets dulled from grazing a tiny bone will cause awful tissue damage.
So how do you flawlessly repeat that exact motion millions of times? The answer is incredibly sophisticated automation. Farms rely on these huge combination sorting and vaccination machines. They evenly sort the fish, slide them down these slick metal channels, and deliver pinpoint-accurate injections straight into that tiny abdominal pocket. But even with all this futuristic tech, vets and farm workers still have to constantly spot check and dissect samples just to prove that the vaccine is actually landing in that perfect 1 millimeter sweet spot.
It's wild, right? From the microscopic anatomy of a hijacked cell to these massive robotic machines injecting millions of slippery fish, aquaculture really is this intense, ongoing biological arms race. We have literally figured out how to pre-stock the immune archives of millions of animals to outsmart invisible killers. But it does leave us with a pretty provocative question.
If nature specifically designed these diseases to naturally control dense populations, what is the ultimate limit to how far human engineering and our little trained immune factories can actually push back? It is a fascinating balancing act between biology and industry, and one we are still figuring out every single day. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and hey, keep that curiosity alive.